if there's anything, like if you read something you've written and you don't want us to put it in the recording, you can just tell us before you leave or even after. So I thought we would take maybe 5 minutes and just brainstorm about what to write about. Because there's so much, right? I mean, there's so many things. How many people came with something to write about already? Yeah, I know Carol and Louise have come every time. But I was told by some other people that came, it's like, oh, I'm just not prepared. So let's just take a few minutes. Those of you that are ready to write, you can go ahead, but you can also help us with brainstorming. So, what are some of the things that people have written about in the past? Relationships problematic, happy ones, current ones, past ones. That's one idea for writing. What about Carol? What's one thing you've written about in the past?
Don't remember, but I'll give you the title of what I'm writing today. It's called A Surprise, which means I'm not going to tell you.
It's always so enthusiastic. I remember one thing you read to us. I don't remember if it was a poem or just a short story, but it was about seeing a bird outside your apartment on a walk, I think. And it was all about this appreciation for this little bird. So it's something, that you saw on a walk or while you're driving. The other day, I saw probably 200 birds on one wire between two telephone poles, and they were jammed together, and they just looked so cute.
You know
So,
what I read? I read that when they're jammed together, it means it's warm outside. And when they're, no, no, no. It means
oh,
She got frozen.
yeah, probably means it's cold.
maybe it's not true.
So we missed a little bit because you froze. So
Ah,
just a little bit.
okay, well, no, I'd read that when birds are, when you're driving down the road, you see these birds on the wire, and when they're separated from each other, it means it's warmer outside. But when
Really?
it's cold outside, they
Oh,
cluster closer together, which
that
is
makes
pretty
sense.
sensible.
That makes sense. Right. So that's something I don't know why I'm drawn to birds, and you guys know that I've had birds all the time you've known me. So I just love looking at birds. So I might write
Hmm.
about that.
Me too.
So Trish could write about her house, or maybe she wants to avoid writing about her house.
I think I'll save that for another day when it's all finished and I'm
Yeah,
out of this place. So I think I'll be better able to write it.
yeah. And then Chuck, we always love your stories about your childhood in Appalachia. Is it Appalachia or Appalachia?
It's Appalachia,
Okay.
according to Janet, who was back there on a service project. And most of the people from back there do say Appalachia. And I don't say, I say it don't matter what you say, you know what we're talking about, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you know Dolly Parton?
And what about Dolly?
Yeah, did you know Dolly Parton when you were in Appalachia?
Didn't
No,
Appalachia.
she grew
Oh,
up there, right?
I did not know. She grew up in Tennessee, Pigeon
Oh,
Forge. No, I did not know her. I've been to Dollywood though. She has a park back there. What the hell is that?
it's in there. Sounds like a plane.
No, I
okay.
didn't know Dolly Parton. I met in Dollywood. She's got about 25 or more relatives. Everybody that's ever been related to her in any way, shape, or form works at her amusement park.
No.
And it's kind of like Knott's Berry Farm. And if you get a blacksmith, they've got a log flume, right, and things like that. And they're all they're related. So second,
Nice.
third cousin, and they all talk like her on purpose, probably. Is that my story?
No, but it could be.
It could be. You could talk about it.
Well, Dolly Parton sure has made she's a hero of mine, believe me,
She's an
because of
amazing
her.
philanthropist.
She is absolutely genuine to the core, in spite of the tons of makeup and implants and whatever the hell else she does to everybody. She's the real thing.
Now she has a
Made my COVID come true too. My COVID vaccine. She gave $1 million to Moderna for them to make the vaccine.
wow,
Really? I
wow.
didn't know that.
Oh, wow.
She's a really great songwriter. She's written a
Mhm.
lot of good songs.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Some of
she
you may
has.
not have heard, but she has.
She also has a children's book club. She sends a book a month to poor children.
Really?
And I think that she hit her millionth book a couple of, like 6 months ago. I saw an interview with her. And before that, I didn't realize that she was generous in any way. I thought she was very involved because I stereotyped her as a celebrity. So I am going to write something. I haven't figured out what, but Emily's getting married in a week and a half, and a friend of hers, as a present to her, is compiling stories about rituals in your family. And so from all the guests, and then she's going to put it together in a notebook for Emily and Patrick. So I'm going to think of something to write about as a ritual or a tradition or something that was special in our family. So why don't we take some time to be quiet and you can think about what to write. And even if you don't think of something, you can just make a list of things. You can make an outline. You can just use it as meditation time and listen to the stories afterwards. Whatever you like. All right.
I would like to read first. I need to leave before 3.
Okay.
So, but I want to hear everybody else's story too.
Okay.
Um,
We'll be done before then.
yeah, okay. All right. I have written about my traveling, some of it. There's a lot, but I feel so lucky to have traveled to or through about 10 of the United States with Ken Stroker, my boyfriend of 9 years, beginning in the summer of 1999. We also went to Mexico 4 times. Our relationship was founded in travel because Ken lived in Ontario, California, 60 miles east of Santa Monica on the 10 freeway, under the gaze of beautiful Mount Baldy, part of the San Gabriel mountain range. Our first trip was outside the U.S. We stayed for 2 nights in Ensenada, Mexico, and we also took a week longer trip to Tlacotalpan, Mexico, in the state of Veracruz. We got to participate in a week-long holiday celebration where we seemed to be the only American tourists, which for some reason I like. One of the best trips was to Florida. For a mere $8, we rented a canoe and paddled down a river. We saw turtles in the river and were surprised by a manatee that swam under our canoe in very shallow waters. We saw alligators in Florida. They seem to reside in most bodies of fresh water, rivers, lakes, even a city park. On a walk, Kenny spotted an armadillo. We became avid about seeing alligators. Florida has many state and national and regional parks in which we found amazing wildlife, including in one, a mama and her baby alligators. We took a great road trip through Arizona. I remember driving through long desert valleys where trains ran, and we just drove for miles in seemingly empty space. We saw the Grand Canyon, and during our trip to Utah, we visited 4 or 5 national parks, including Bryce and Zion. When Ken moved to Columbia, Missouri, and I went with him to move, and I remember coming back, I was like a child exclaiming, I drove through 5 states. On one trip, we departed from the Ontario airport on a weeknight. The airport was almost deserted. The personnel that guided us through security checkpoints, and there were 5 or so of them, must have been bored out of their minds because of so few travelers. They asked us to play our instruments and sing a song, and we laughed. And one fellow said, "We're not kidding." So we took out his mandolin and my guitar, and we sang them a song. That's all I got, actually. That's it. Thank you.
Man, I did not know that you guys traveled that much.
We did. Like every year, we took 3 trips for like 6 years. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was great. It was
Yeah.
amazing. I always got 10 days off. I used all my vacation time from work, and he had
One
it
of the
too.
things I love about this writing is that you find out so much about people, you know?
Yeah. We had at my house, we had a going away concert party with several musicians performing on the back porch, and it was a lot of fun. Louise and Kenny sang songs, as did several others, many couples, the day before he left, I think. I miss him.
Mm. Who would like to read next? Okay, Daria.
So originally I wrote something and then I didn't really think it was all that significant, so I started writing something else. So I'm gonna read the something else. And it's rather short because it came at the very end. So I have a dear friend, Rick. I met him 7 years ago at a lecture. I remember he had the most heartwarming smile I had ever seen. He also wore a Cambridge t-shirt. It was almost love at first sight, but because of the age gap, I'd rather call it friendship at first sight. I introduced myself after the lecture, and we made dinner plans soon after. He's funny, smart, and charming. Most importantly, he's kind. His acceptance of others is mesmerizing. If I were closer to his age, I'd marry him in a heartbeat. For now, his lifelong friendship is enough. That's all I have. Thank you.
That's lovely.
That's great.
Yeah, I think, sometimes we start writing something and then it just doesn't feel either significant or we lose interest, it's just not interesting enough. I love knowing that about your friend. Anybody else? Okay, Chuck, and then Trish. You're muted, Chuck.
I am muted. I'm not muted now. Right? Okay, to start. All right, we were talking about Dollywood and Appalachia and all of that, so I just picked up the pen and started writing sort of a sketch. My daughter Amanda has a birthday on October 10th. She and her boyfriend are taking a vacation in the Great Smoky Mountain National Park. They will be visiting the Bradley homestead at the park, and at the park entrance, Cherokee, North Carolina. I am researching the connection we have as a family with the formerly owned property, now U.S. owned national park. My mother's mother was a Bradley, and her mother was a Hughes, later Paris. These are all very old, established, because they go way back to where the whites settled that property. No doubt took it away from the Cherokee. Anyway, the property at the park entrance was called Bradleyville, or town, as the extended family or clan, if you will, owned much of the land bordering the Cherokee Indian Reservation. Both that was informal. Both of my mother's parents are buried in the park, as are both of her grandparents. The cemetery is unkept and most markers are simply rocks with no inscriptions. Amanda will visit the cemetery, as I have many times. I'm thankful for her interest and am looking for a local person to guide her around my ancestral home. The park is divided between Tennessee, and Dolly Parton is divided between Tennessee and North Carolina. The Appalachian Ridge, Mountain Ridge, is the dividing line. And Dolly Parton is from Pigeon Forge on the Tennessee side. Her small house is now her small house is now restored and is a tourist attraction, which I have visited. She was really into glamour at an early age, as she still is. makeup, wigs, silicone, a beautiful example of rags to riches. Never got above her raisin, as they say back there, and her generosity is huge. I never met her, but so many of her relatives work at Dollywood that I feel that I have female. So many of her relatives work at Dollywood that I feel that I have female flirts, everyone. So much fun for a male. I was there this time. I'm adding this. It's a little risque, so forgive me. I was watching the train go by. They have a steam locomotive that runs around the park, and I was looking at it, and I turned to the woman on my park who worked there, and I said, "Tell me where I can catch that train." And she said, "You can't catch that train. It's fast." And then she grabs me by the leg and lifts it up. It was my shorts and skinny legs. And she says, "Well, let's see how far you can get it up." And she lifts my leg up, and I realized I was, after she put it down, that I was being scoped out by a Dollywood flirt or a flirt, and which didn't bother me that much.
That's funny. Dollywood flirt. That's great.
Well, they are 25 of them, and every one is as if they were on the make. They're not serious, but they are risque as all hell, and dressed like Daisy May, you know, from Little Abner. They dress in the shortest shorts and the halter tops, and it's a big it's part of the attraction. Yeah.
Giving it back to you as good as you can give, right?
Yeah. It's worth visiting. I've been there twice, I think. They have her home in the park in Dollywood. They moved the little house into the park, and you go into her bedroom and see all her makeup and stuff and her mirrors, and see all the stuff that she has. And it's fun. I love Dolly. You might imagine.
You love the Great Smokies too?
Yeah, well,
But there's a brand new book out.
We're running out of time.
Oh yeah, we are. So we have Trish and Carol and me to read. Who wants to read first? Oh, Trish, you already said, yeah. So do unmute yourself. Unmute yourself because you're muted. Thank you.
Okay, I'll read mine. It's sort of at the beginning of a longer story, but I'll read what I wrote. First actual family trip. In 1963, my oldest sibling, Sue, was graduating from high school. My mother decided we should take a trip to Florida and visit her Uncle Bill, as this would be the last time we would have a trip as a family. It was memorable in many ways. First and foremost, is it important to note that this is the longest trip we ever took together. Oh, the longest trip we ever took together before was to Cape Cod, where my mother's parents had a house very close to the beach, a 2-minute walk actually, on a small road. Upon arriving, each took off in their own direction to return for food and sleep. Togetherness, as is generally thought of, was rare. Rain and hurricanes brought us together to play board games. So you can imagine what it was like to have 5 children ranging in age from 9 to 17 in a station wagon with no air conditioning and only 3 available windows, with the driver taking the 4th. A journey to remember. Sometime after the 4th of July, we all loaded into the station wagon to start the journey. Shortly after leaving my grandparents' house, the car started to overheat. Unfortunately, we had not gone very far, and as my grandparents owned a Ford dealership, we took the car there. The thermostat had broken. So 4 hours later, we all piled into the car again, and away we went. Now, my mother had on her agenda how far we should go each day and how often we should stop. It was quite a first day. About 9 o'clock at night, she decided we should look for a place to stay as we're driving down a freeway of sorts. Now you have to remember, this is 1963. So she figured with 4 other pairs of eyes, not counting my sister who was 9, we'd be able to spot one shortly. About an hour later, we did spot one.
Wow. That's great.
Your turn, Jean.
Oh my gosh. I can imagine what went on in that car. We only had 2 kids. Oh my gosh. Wow. Okay, Carol, would you like to read?
Okay, I'll read really fast. This is about a surprise.
Okay.
It's been a while since I lived in Chicago, and when I last did, I'd been there almost 40 years. My 2 daughters had moved on, and I was living alone. It's springtime, and my kitchen door is open. I eat all of my meals on an old Salvation Army oak table that I loved. I had in the kitchen. I sat where I could look out the door to my porch and a side lawn. For some reason, I kept looking at the lawn. Why? I'm not sure. I did see the grass needed cutting, and I noted a small depression in the center of the space. Went back to my lunch, looked out again, got more milk and a piece of fruit. Then I looked out again. I wondered why. Finally, I decided to walk outside, checking on my 2 vegetable patches, as well as the flower borders growing along the house. I love digging in the dirt, soil that is. As long as I was out there, I wandered over to the depression I had noted. It looked fine to me. Green grass all over the yard. On an impulse, I bent over and brushed my hand over the grass above the depression, then played a little bit with it and parted it. What? What's all that fluff? That brown fluff, that fur? Carefully, I knelt on the grass and carefully parted the grass. Were there 5 or 7 or 10 newborn bunny rabbits? Still as can be, eyes shut. This was a shock, a surprise. I'd heard young rabbits rattling around in the flower beds, but never before in the middle of an open space, and never a nest of them. I was so excited. Second thoughts, known as the neighborhood wildlife expert, I thought of a few kids I could share this with. Not likely. I never think of rabbits as being smart, but a few hours later, I went to check on them. They were gone. That mother watched me or smelled me or something. That smart, hardworking mom had carried them, I think, one by one to another hiding place. I didn't look for it, mostly wanting her to rest and not be fearful that we giants would harm her infants. That's it.
Oh,
My respect for bunny rabbits grew mightily.
oh,
That's
beautiful.
great.
Oh, I love stories about animals. And mine's about animals, about pets. So you remember that this is a like story about our family that's going to go in the book for Emily for her wedding. Whenever we had a sick pet, which had to stay in the animal hospital, we made copies of a photograph of everyone in our family and wrote and decorated get well messages, covered those with plastic page protectors, and then we asked the hospital staff to put those inside the cage where the pet was recuperating. We did this for our 18-year-old cat Simba when he was treated for diabetes related complications, and for our Bichon Frise dog, Little Bear, who had a skin condition that needed some overnight stays in the hospital. Many of the hospital staff would laugh or they were in tears when they told us about showing our works of art to our animals during their treatments. They were so special, the staff at this hospital. When Simba needed extensive treatment and finally passed away, what kept our kids going was writing daily messages to him. And the staff allowed us to deliver them and visit our sick pet. We sat next to the cage and talked to him and showed him pictures of our colored cards. So after our animals passed away, those colorful get well cards were a poignant reminder to us of our love for our dear pets. So after writing this, I remembered a few sweet moments with each of those animals. Emily carted Simba around in a baby carriage with blankets under him and around him and a little hat on his head. And he tolerated it. He just sat, he loved her. And then Little Bear was a little ball of white fluff. He was my dog, pretty much. He waited for me on a table window every day when I drove home at dinner time. And I took him along whenever I went to a store. He would sit up very straight and look out the window and watch me as I walked into the door of the store. And then until he would sit there until I came out again, as if he was keeping guard in the car. And then lastly, with Little Bear, I took him as many places as I could when I was doing errands in the car. And he loved, of course, to look out the window. But when I had to roll the window up, he would get so excited that he would lick the window. And there were lick marks all over the passenger side window. So after he passed away at the age of 16, I couldn't wash the window for almost a year. That's it. So it's just about 3:00 and Louise has to go, and I enjoyed this so much. Thank you for coming.
I did too. Thank you for having us.
Ooh, I'm so glad you came, Trish. You're a nice addition.
Thank you.
Wonderful interlude. Let's do it again for sure.
Yes, definitely. And then come to poetry too.
I will.
Everybody here comes to poetry. And sometimes we write and sometimes we just read. So, I mean, we don't write during the poetry. We just write beforehand and bring it. So thanks.
And what is next week?
Next week is another COVID thing with Claudia. We have a panel of people who've had COVID who talk about their experiences.
Okay.
And then she's going to talk a little bit more about testing and treatments. I realized, if I had to I've never been tested. I wouldn't know what to do. I guess I would probably go to an urgent care. And I imagine there are a lot of people like me who don't know. Do I go, buy something from CVS or what do I do? So
Google it.
I think they do tests at CVS. I've had tests done because I've had procedures done. That's not because I've been sick.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
See ya.
Louise,
Thank you
can
for
turn off the
recording.
Just turn off the recording.
Okay. Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.